Have you ever had to fire someone and realized afterward that you really bungled it? If that story resonates with you, you won't want to miss the next episode of Bad Boss Confessional. Hi, everyone. I'm Beth Fahey, and welcome to Bad Boss Confessional. I've been a leader for over 30 years, and I'll be honest, I've made plenty of mistakes along the way. The thing is, those mistakes taught me more about leadership than any success ever did. This podcast is where we get honest about the moments we'd rather forget and discover why they're actually the ones worth remembering. Each week, I talk with leaders who aren't afraid to share their worst boss moments and what they learned from them. Because here's what I know: every great leader has a story they're not proud of. And this is where we tell those stories. Today's guest is Matt Haney, a hands on business operator and seasoned fractional integrator with over 15 years' experience working with visionary founded businesses that have hit a ceiling. Known for his pragmatic approach, Matt helps leadership teams cut through the chaos, gain traction, and transform into a well run organization focused on sustainable growth. Matt, it's great to see you here on the podcast.
I am so excited to share my shortcomings.
Good.
Thanks for having me, Beth. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you too. I mean, we just kind of have to, let our hair down and just kind of, reveal that everybody's working on their stuff and we're all kind of faking it, right?
We are. There's a lot of imposter syndrome going on in our day to day, for sure.
Yeah. So tell me, how did you end up in the world of being a fractional integrator?
Well, it was a complete accident, like most good stories that turn successful. It was, and my story goes back to my first job out of college. I was working as an analyst at a small family office. We were buying single family homes across the state of Texas. We bought 500 single family houses. And I was working with a visionary who had an accounting background, but a big vision for this business. And that was my first exposure to entrepreneurship in its formal way, and also my first exposure to a visionary. And then I transferred that into something else and something else. And I won't bore you with the transitions. But what I will tell you is every single one of those opportunities came with a visionary of some sort who really had a big passion and a big vision. But the one common thing was that he or she struggled to articulate that vision, A, and B, execute that vision because that wasn't their given talent. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I kept pairing myself next to these visionaries and really enjoyed, cutting through the chaos with helping people below the visionary understand just what in the hell the visionary was actually saying. So that was this epiphany. We started, and then later on in my career, we started a construction company that was a really niche business that I had no construction experience, but we parlayed that into an exit that was made a little bit of money, and I was like, oh man, I'm so excited! I'm such this big entrepreneur. I made this money. Turn around and invested half of that into a business and failed within a year. And I was like, wait a minute. I had done so well with some of these other people next to me. What was the common theme? The common theme was that I like working with people and I like being next to somebody with a vision and having that camaraderie and partnership. So I turned that into 8 years of successful fractional integrator work, 20 plus engagements, have a small team of people that help me execute, and absolutely love what I do, Beth. It's a treat to get to do my job.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, and I know that there are a lot of people who need fractional integrators, and many of them don't even know what that is. And so oftentimes I'm introducing that concept to different teams, particularly if they're a small team or, they're just starting to form a leadership team, form departments. Sometimes these companies are, I come in and everybody's doing everything and they don't have somebody that's focused on execution, and they really can't afford to have somebody in full time that's just focused on execution. So I know that your services are very much needed.
That is right in the wheelhouse of what we do, and I think the best part of what we do is that it's genuine in the sense that we need to be the right person for the right seat, at the right time. And if we are, it's magical. And if we're not, it's evident. It becomes really crystal clear when something's not connected. And it's really special as a leader and as a business owner and as a, someone to help say this isn't right or this is actually great. And watching the relationship between us and the visionary work is special because we get to say things in a respectful, candid, direct way that nobody else in the business can say for fear of, getting fired or having judgment passed or whatever. I mean, we're there to be direct and candid, but respectful. And I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, the deepest relationships I've had in business come with candor and respect.
Yeah. So that leads me to this question, which is, I'm going to ask you to share with candor, maybe something from your past on your leadership journey, just because we've all, you didn't arrive a fully formed leader.
Yeah. You don't wake up a fully formed adult. You certainly don't turn into a fully functioning male until arguably your mid 20s, maybe later. So there's certainly been instances over the years where, particularly now in my career, I look back and I go, man, that was awful. What in the world possessed you to take that position, A, and B, take that delivery? And I find myself replaying some of these scenarios on a semi-regular basis because it's like I don't want to do that again. I don't want to do that again. So there's one that sticks out, and the most interesting thing about it is that to this day it's unresolved, and I still can't forgive myself. So without going too far into it, I'll go back. I was serving as an interim, so this has been in the last 8 years, just to give you a little bit of a little bit of context that this wasn't 20 years ago in my career. This was in the last decade. I was brought in to be COO of a large distribution business. Company was doing 75 million a year in revenue. They had done very well, and COVID really impacted their business. They were a work from work environment, and when COVID happened, it dismantled that work from work. They also happened to have been, Beth, if you can believe this, in the office furniture space. They distributed office furniture. So we've got COVID, we've got office furniture, we've got work from work turned remote, really challenging scenarios on top of having to reorganize a business that was really struggling with revenue. So we did a reduction in workforce. And for those of you that don't know, that's one of the most unfun things a leader can do. And we reorged the company, which required us to let go of almost 30 people. That was tough. That was really, really tough. So I was on the outside of the business and didn't come with a ton of what I call pre existing conditions. I didn't have history or relationships with a lot of these folks. And that has its pros and cons. In this scenario, I was there to do a job and it did involve changing people's lives in a negative way. And never does one take that lightly. But we struggled with this one tenured employee who had been with the company since inception, 20 years, Beth, a 20-year employee who was good at her job, but needed to move from the business. I mean, she was a sacred cow. That's what it is. EOS would say she was a sacred cow, and that we protected her. And I, after the first round, we decided to keep her, and after the second round of layoffs, it was time for her to move on. And I had prepared myself for what the conversation was going to be, and I was going to be very succinct and direct and not offer a ton of information. And at the time, that was like, okay, great. This is how I'm going to do it. Pump myself up, go in, and just handle it about as poorly as you could. By the way, I'd already let go of 15 other people in a way that was respectful and with dignity. But this woman happened to have been a little bit combative, and I found myself arguing and and going through all of the reasons as to why she wasn't a good employee and all of the things that I'm going, as I'm saying all these things, I have no real understanding of the impact that it's making her feel. I'm truly looking at it from my lens, which is how do I get through this as quickly as I can so that I can move on to the next task. Wow. What a terrible, terrible, terrible decision. Um, and Beth, I'm still, as you know, haunted by it today. Like it was such a bad, bad thing. So that's the story, and I can give you a little more. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, but I can give you a little more as to what I tried to do to resolve it.
Yeah, I mean, like, definitely tell us what did happen after the fact. And I mean, because I've I hate that you're telling this story. I'm like, I remember this time where this happened to me as well, when I got triggered in a situation that I was really just trying to be very practical, pragmatic, um, and I also was not considering that person's feelings. And so I'm feeling every ounce of what you're talking about here. So I'm just curious, like, what ended up happening, or what was the clarity break you took? What did you learn?
Yeah, yeah. I think the interesting thing is that so I formed a unique relationship with the founder of that business, who was no longer running the company. And she was older and an awesome woman in her own rights. She hired this person that I had to let go. She wasn't involved in the business when I had to let this woman go. But the woman that was let go and the original founder had a unique relationship, right? They had worked together forever. They were great friends. They had become good friends. And yes, there was that boss friend challenge, which happens. But what ended up coming of this was that the founder of the business, this woman who I let go reached out to her and just said, "Hey, this is what happened, and this is how it was handled." And I got a phone call from the founder that said, "I'd like to give you some feedback." And here I am. I was like, just puffy chested. I was, so proud of the fact that I had to handle these hard situation. And she was like, that's not you. What was going on?" She's like, "I know you and I've seen you interact as a leader. What happened? Like, what in the world?" And I went through the scenario, and she's actually the one that said, "That was incredibly selfish of you and lacking empathy." Um, and I was taken back because it was, no one wants to be told that you are being selfish and lacking empathy. But I just continued to process it. And I was like, you know what? You're exactly right. I went in there with a preconceived notion, ready to fight, ready to argue, and she said, I think you need to replay that scenario in your head, quote. And I did. And I attempted to reach back to the woman initially, within a few weeks to repair or try to, and she didn't answer the call. And then I found myself, Beth, I'm not kidding, 6 months later, still going, man, is there any? And the woman landed at a perfectly great career, and it was, she would probably say it was a catalyst for her that was needed. But I tried so hard to repair it, tried so hard, and still to this day, I don't know, 7 or 8 years later, it's unresolved. And I haven't reached out to try. But I think one of the morals of this story is, you teach your young children or around you, your words can hurt people. Um, this is a perfect example. Like, you can't unsay what's been said, and you can't re-deliver the way in which you delivered it. So here I am learning from it and really feeling, you know, vulnerable around the fact that every interaction with people affects the receiver and the giver differently.
So how has this impacted your behavior moving forward? Because I would imagine that you've had to let people go since.
Just last week, actually, with a company that's quickly growing and doing very well, but having outgrown some talent and leveling up, we were in a position where I was teaching a young leader how we were going to go through this termination with these two particular employees. That this leader recently inherited this team. So we've got a fast growing business. We're changing dynamics. I'm sitting in the integrator COO seat. Got a young director of operations below me, and it's his obligation to let this person go. So the first thing I said to everybody is, Are these people going to be surprised?" What do you think the answer was, Beth?
I would say they said no.
The answer was yes, they're going to be surprised. So, you know what I said? There's our first failure. We cannot go into a termination and have anybody be surprised unless our company has just deteriorated underneath us and the world is falling, the sky's falling. Otherwise, it's our job as leaders to continue to coach and develop and train our staff. And if they're falling short, it's our job to let them know that. We have to give them feedback and an opportunity to be successful, because nobody deserves to be surprised by a firing unless there's something outside of our income. So first of all, I was like, okay, now what do we do? And he's like, well, so my point is, Beth, we've got to be honest and candid with people, even when they're especially when they're doing poorly, so that if there is a termination for cause or lack of performance, it's not a surprise. So that's the first problem going into that scenario, is the leader who just inherited this team says they're going to be surprised. And I'm like, okay, is there anything we can do operationally to salvage these relationships? And the answer was short, is no. They're junior level talent, and we, based on the delivery we need senior level talent. They're taking up a spot. We just need to move forward. I was like, well, this is going to be fun. We're going to go into yet another scenario where the people that are receiving the termination are surprised. That's horrible. I said, all right, that is what it is. We got to move forward and figure it out. So, every time I do this, it becomes we're changing the outcome of someone's life. So let's not take that lightly. But we went in with a script, because that's what you're supposed to do, and had a couple hard conversations that were empathetic and understanding. And it's really hard to tell someone, like, sorry, this is a surprise, but here we are. So, but that's what happened in this scenario. And we handled it with grace. Thankfully, we were able to give them a 6-week severance, which is a very nice thing that I encourage all leaders to do, is to, run your business in a way that you can offer some sort of a severance. It's a respectful thing to do. It's not always feasible with cash flow, et cetera. And then the other thing is, I literally text over or message inside there, here's my cell phone and here's my email address. And I'd love to help you, like, genuinely. I'd love to help you find your next step. I'd love to be a reference. And if there's anything we can do to help you, like, you haven't been deceitful, you haven't been dishonest, or like, we need to help. So I think that's one of the things that, helps people, I guess, in a tough situation, is to be genuine, and reach out and give a hand to that person. So I think if I can draw kind of a tie to that scenario, it's the first scenario where I, let this person go ungracefully, is that, trying to understand how that person is feeling um, helps you deliver a message that's more graceful.
Yeah. And human.
Well said. Yep. Human.
So I want to go back to this concept, and the reason that I said no to, were they surprised, is because my experience is that people think that they have told people, but they actually haven't. And if you ask the direct report, were they clear with expectations? Did they communicate well? In many cases, the bosses feel like they've done a good job, and but they didn't get it because the feedback has been so softened, and that it hasn't been direct enough when somebody isn't meeting expectations or timely enough.
Or the expectations haven't been set. So your point is spot on, which is, we as leaders need to over deliver expectations in a way that's quantifiable and not, objective. Like, there needs to be some measurement, some tool. And thankfully, in our businesses, we do our one-on-ones on a regular basis, but we also do quarterly check-ins, and we have an agenda that's bi-directional, in the sense that I get to give feedback and I get to receive feedback, and that's our chance. That's our chance. And I always say, it's the most disarming way to have a constructive conversation, is when it's regular and when it's scheduled. So it's on the calendar. Beth knows it's coming. Matt knows it's coming. We have it on the calendar. We have a form that we're filling out and going back and forth. What a beautiful way to give somebody a chance to be honest and candid.
The quarterly conversation, so for those of you that are not running on EOS, the quarterly conversation is the tool that we teach. And it's very simple: what's working, what's not working, next steps, and conclude. That's it. And it's a real conversation, and both parties are supposed to bring what's working and what's not working with an agenda to move forward. And it's really just about having a real conversation and developing a relationship with the direct report. And so, teaching this in the Great Boss workshops, I find that people overcomplicate this and they make it something that it isn't, or want it to be a performance review, and it's not. It's really just let's just air things out and stay on the same page. And if you do that consistently and you are bringing the real what's not workings into the conversation, this is where you can just get super clear about those expectations. So in the world of EOS, for example, if somebody isn't getting their rocks completed or they're not hitting their measurables, their weekly scorecard numbers, it's an opportunity to kind of get them back on track before it gets completely off the rails and you're faced with a firing question, if that person, stays or goes. So, it sounds simple, but it's not very easy for a lot of people, but it can solve so many problems before they even happen.
I think a word I like to use as we're going through this is intentional, and it's you know the way in which we're delivering that feedback is intentional, right? And I've found that most, if not every person, appreciate the fact that there is a structure, that feedback comes in a form of regularity and intentionality, because then they can be disarmed by it and feel comfortable saying, and I want the feedback just as much as I want to give it. I mean, I absolutely want it, especially if you rewind back to some of those, terrible stories I've told around, the feedback I received after the fact, right? It's like, how do we give feedback before we're to that boiling point? That's where good leaders shine, in my opinion.
So let me ask you a little bit about your business and how you work with teams, leadership teams. And I'm just curious if this is one of those things that pops up all the time with leaders, is that feedback piece.
Not all the time, but every single time, every single time. And if you go back to sort of what I said about starting my career, it was a visionary leader thinking they were crystal clear with their vision and crystal clear with the needs. Right? I mean, you laugh because you've only seen it 100 times, and so have I. So that's where we have to go back to those people, especially. And as a fractional integrator, um, the best visionaries are the ones that are curious and humble, in my opinion. They know their shortcomings, they also know their strengths. And part of that curiosity and humility is saying, hey, how did that go? Mm, what could I have done differently? Um, and vice versa. And that's a fun part of being a leader and a coach and a fractional executive, is that we get to be honest with that visionary and encourage them to deliver feedback and say to them, you weren't clear, but let's clear it up. Like, we have the chance to fix it, and let's do that. Let's lean back into that response, and maybe we could follow it up with X, or we could add the issue to the issues list to make sure it's crystal clear, and talk it out. So that's a huge part of what we get to do, is encourage feedback. And most business owners and visionary owners and leaders respect it, appreciate it, and it makes us all better, not just the person getting the feedback, but the person giving it.
So another question for you is, because I've worked with a handful of fractional integrators, not a ton. Most of the time, it's somebody internal who's the most logical or the most execution oriented that ends up in the integrator seat, or sometimes the visionary stays in that seat. I'm curious to know what happens culturally when you are just kind of dropped into the middle of an existing culture where everybody is looking to the visionary for the answer.
Wow, so cool that you say that, because having been plopped into, probably close to 20 different businesses in some capacity, we spend the first several weeks establishing credibility and rapport with that team. We spend the next few weeks listening to everyone bitch about what's wrong. And then we spend the next few weeks executing against objectives. So to your point, it does take time. And every time we're being proposed for an engagement, I tell them, our first several weeks are just learning and listening to dynamics and understanding how the team cross departmentally acts, where big gaping holes are in the organization. So we're just absorbing through a fire hose. But that's also what makes it really cool, Beth. That's also what I know you guys, you implementers, love, is that you get to see all these different opportunities in a business. Um, so the entry to the business is always crucial. But it's being curious, right? And there's a lot of common themes. The first common theme is that every business owner thinks their business is different, right? How many times have you heard that? I'm different, Beth. I'm different. My business is different.
We're special.
You're special. And I always tell people, yes, you are different. Your business is different, but there's 5 to 6 pillars in every business that are the same, and our job is to strengthen those pillars. And you know what they are, finance, ops, marketing, HR, blah, 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 all this stuff. So, we start pulling apart some of those things. And thankfully, most of our work comes from our fine friends in the EOS implementer community. So I'm inheriting a VTO. I'm inheriting rocks generally. I'm not inheriting them myself, but the structure is there. I'm also inheriting most times a red scorecard, which means something hasn't been going as planned, which has triggered the need for a change. So it's a very natural thing for us to come in when we can say, I don't want your jobs. I'm not here to fire everybody. I'm here to help us get to that next point and let the visionary go do what they're best at, whatever that is. Most times it's not holding people accountable.
Yeah, most of the time it isn't. And once they realize that they can be free of it, then it's awesome, right?
That transformation is very special when they have the opportunity to go do what they need to do and can do and grow the business. My title in my LinkedIn profile or whatever is, we run ops so you can run the vision, and truly letting somebody be free of the fact that they don't have to manage all these people. And you said something earlier which was really, that triggered me. It was like, um, when the visionary is supposed to know the answer, or they're the one that's supposed to be the person that knows everything. And when we generally come in, that visionary's reached the ceiling of knowing the answer. And it's not because we know the answer, it's because we can help facilitate and get to that point. So earlier, curiosity and vulnerability, like a visionary saying, hey, I've gotten this where I can go. I need headspace. I need clarity. Can you come in and help? Just gives them the freedom to go focus on something different.
Yeah, which is usually growth for the organization.
It sure should be, right?
Yeah. And the guilt that's associated with that transition, I mean, I've talked about that a lot already on this podcast, is that when a visionary does get somebody in there who can actually do the execution part, it's not uncommon for a while that they are sort of adrift. They don't know what to do with themselves.
So amazing you say that.
They have been the answer person, they have been responsible for everything. And when they realize that they don't have to step in all the time, they've lost a bit of their identity. They don't know what it is they're supposed to do. And if they actually went out into the world and fostered the big relationships and went to the conferences, did the speaking, did all the things that, somebody in their position.
Should be doing, right. Yeah.
Right, to grow the organization. I think for some it's a hard transition because also they've got the pull of the people that still exist in the organization that are grieving.
That relationship change. It's hard, Beth. It's hard. They hired them, they nurtured them, they brought them into the nest, and now all of a sudden my visionary leader is no longer accessible. And I always tell the visionary, you are absolutely accessible. The relationship you have with those people is mission critical to the business, and it's my job to make sure that elements of that get to stay, right? That because it's really hard for a visionary to just walk out the door and figuratively go play golf every day. It's like, no, we've got to, but in order to grow, we do have to we do have to change the dynamic a little bit in order to get, to that next level.
Yeah, and I think when they are reaching out to you, they realize that the bottleneck is at the top of the bottle.
That's exactly right. That's exact. Well, or someone said the other side of that coin is not every engagement starts and ends with roses and sunshine. I mean, sometimes it's my leadership team says we need somebody. I, as the visionary, I don't need anybody. I'm great. But the leadership team or the OSI or the executive coach or the therapist or the wife or someone says, hey, you need to do something different. You need to consider something because you're going crazy. You're working 60 hours a week. You're not present here and there, whatnot. But it really means we've got to get the visionary has to be willing to get there. Just like anybody trying to overcome a challenge, they've got to be mentally ready for the good and bad that come with that transition. And they have to be ready for it because otherwise we're just going to waste each other's time, effort, and money if they're genuinely not ready to let go of the vine.
Well, I have a question. I ask different versions of this in every podcast. But you know that old saying, your strengths are your weaknesses?
Oh, yes.
Do you have a strength that sometimes shows up as a weakness?
Ooh, I love this question. Immediately, what comes to mind is what makes me successful in this business is that I am probably a little more visionary than not, in the sense that my personality and my acumen ability allows me to go from business to business. I mean, I'm going to hang up with you here and have a one on one the 2 minutes after we're done. So that's a strength, right? Is being able to transition my brain into that next opportunity without missing a beat. I mean, I will know exactly where we are in that business the minute I click on that link. But I probably will forget that I have to pick up my daughter at 3:45 today because it's volleyball practice day and my wife's out of town, so I've got to be there at 3:45. So I my weakness with that is that I, I don't go I'm kind of all over the place at times. And that's a challenge. So but it's also a really special thing that I get to do, which is get in and out of businesses without missing a beat. So yes, superpower and super weakness.
More from my conversation with Matt after a word from our sponsors. Do you love running on EOS? Try Strutty, the EOS platform people love. Native integrations and extra features help you manage people, projects, process, and engagement. Connected to your favorite EOS tools and all in one place. You love EOS. It's time to love the platform you're running it on. Try Strutty free at strutty.com. That's STRETY.com. Strutty, the EOS platform people love. Let's be honest, hiring the right people is hard. That's why I love Titus Talent Strategies. Their whole person hiring approach helps you find and keep A players who align with your values, and they back it with an industry leading guarantee. Best part? Titus Talent Strategies is included in the entrepreneurial toolkit for companies running on EOS. Check them out at titustalent.com/EOS. And now, back to my conversation with Matt. If you were to get a tattoo somewhere on your body that reminded you of what you need to work on, and it doesn't have to be exactly what we just talked about, could be something else. What would that tattoo be and where would it be located?
Yes, great question. I know the immediate answer. The immediate answer it would say be present
Hmm.
for 100 reasons. One of them is be present in the conversation you're having with the person, whoever that person is. Be present in your family and your relationship with your spouse and understanding that that's what's most precious. And it's very easy for me to get enveloped in my world of work because I'm so energized and enjoy it that sometimes it's easy to let things fall that are more important than my relationship with my client. I'm avoiding the area of the body. I'm really avoiding it because I don't know where I could put be present on my body that A would help me be present, and B, I don't know. I don't know where I'd put it. Maybe I'd put it on my finger this way so I could say, be present. I don't know. I don't know. I just made that up. I don't know where it would be. Maybe my arm so that I could look at it every day. I don't know. It's a good question. Okay, flipping it on you.
Okay,
What would yours be and where would it be and what would it consist of?
I know I'm the worst, right? Because I don't really have an answer for this.
Ah, gotcha.
I think that for me, it's just staying in the question.
Mm.
I am a recovering know-it-all.
Well said.
And one of the things that I try in session rooms and I try with my kids and my clients, I want people I also have a really high quick start, so I just wanna get people there faster, so it's faster if I just give you the answer. Let me just give you the answer.
100%.
And so I have to sit on my hands a lot and remind myself that the beauty and the growth opportunity for them is in asking the question, and within that is my own growth opportunity.
That's so huge. Stay in the question. That's so huge. I've never heard it presented that way, Beth. But I too struggle with that. When you know in your bones that you've done this before and you have the answer, it's so easy to blurt it out. But the reality is you just have to let the conversation happen. And as a quick start, a fellow quick start, um, man, it sure is easy just to give the answer. But stay in the question. That's so good.
And I would imagine in your job that comes up all the time is because you could just, well, what we need to do is
Based on experience, this seems like the solution. But I will say I've been in a dozen session rooms with a dozen different EOSIs, and the best ones stay in the question. Now, the other side of that is not necessarily in the session room, but in L10s and other meetings, letting the question linger too long can become counterproductive as well. And I will think that's an art. The art of knowing when to move it forward versus letting it linger and staying in it is, if there's anything that can't be taught, it's that intuition and that understanding and that instinct. And the best people give the question time, but also don't let it stall. Because sometimes we're sitting here on the other side of the board across from you, awesome implementers, going, "Can you just tell us the answer if you know it? Let's just get there."
yeah, and this is where the art and science of facilitation we're learning too, like, every day. Even though I've been doing this for 8 years, I see opportunity after every session. I wish I had done this, or I wish I had phrased the question this way. I should have entered the danger more. And it's not to shame yourself, but just I think there's power in reflection. And if you just go leave the session room, erase the boards, and your task switching, like going to pick up your daughter, and you don't take the opportunity to learn from what happened, that we're also losing an opportunity for growth.
Well said. That is so true. And something I need to do a better job of in my growth is just reflecting back more on what could I have done differently. Maybe not better because we're always trying, doing our best.
If you could have a do-over, right? What would you have done differently? Just like we talked about with your story earlier. We don't get to do do-overs, but we can definitely reflect on it, and it'll help us inform the next decision or the next time that we have to let somebody go or whatever the situation is. So,
Absolutely. You are so true. So true. And I think as leaders, it's our job to continue to teach people that that's something they can do, is reflect and understand what could have gone differently. Because if we're not aware of it, and I would say we're more attuned with our delivery than most, just based on our businesses and what we've done for 8 years, that's something we can give to others, is the ability to sit in the moment after the fact and say, could I have done something different?
yeah. Yeah. And that's really the point of this podcast, right? Is to give people the opportunity, maybe even years later, to look back and say, "Oh, that's what was going on there."
That's what it is. That's what we do.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much for being on the podcast, Matt. It was great to get to know you a little bit better and learn about your business. And I know you're going to continue to help people in these transition periods that every business goes through.
Well, thank you, Beth, for having me. It's a lot of fun to be vulnerable, and share what we've done wrong in an environment that's constructive, and hopefully someone can learn from it. And yeah, as a fractional integrator, I love helping those business owners that are in that transition.
Well, take care, and we'll see you soon.
See you soon, Beth.
Thanks to Matt Haney for sharing his story about the tough decision to let someone go. It's never easy, but we can do it in a way that addresses the human being on the other side of the table. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who needs to hear this. Thanks for listening to Bad Boss Confessional. We'll see you again next week.